Really quick video here. Promise I'll keep them short for you. Just wanted to talk about a couple of things and introduce our study of ecology to you. Obviously, you can see by this picture, we're going to be studying, um, getting rid of that, populations and ecosystems. So it looks like just from this get go, we're going to be studying obviously some living things, not just fish, not just sea anemones. Um, but also, we want to focus on the ecosystems, because it's not just about studying living things. We're also going to be studying non living things. So if we look at that definition of ecology, uh, it ultimately is the study of how living organisms interact with their environment. So I know that you know already from previous science classes what an organism is. I went back and talked to other teachers that you had, and they said, oh, yeah, they definitely know what an organism is. So I just want to go back with you really quickly and briefly mention some things, remind you really of what an organism is. Think about sort of what do you need to have to do or have or show to be considered an organism. Because remember, an organism is anything that's living. So if you're going to be living, kind of redundant there, that these are the things you're going to need, obviously, to take in water. And as you look at this list, like reproduce, try to think of examples of living things and that you already know of, and how they do that. For example, like a uh, two plants, one plant fertilizing another, and then that plant flowers and has seeds. Uh, a cow having a baby. I mean, fish laying eggs. Lots of different examples here. So, as you go down the list, make sure that you could think of different examples of each. Like you have to have a way to take in energy. Um, doesn't matter how you do it, whether you eat your food or if you're a plant, you can photosynthesize. You're going to take in gases. Like in our case, we take in oxygen and give off carbon dioxide. So, all of these things, waste, growing, you're going to have to respond to things in your environment, outside stimuli made up of cells. And this last one's really going to be our biggest, although all of these will come into play. You have to have a suitable environment. So what I want to do in this short video is to really to look at, if we're going to be studying ecology, there are different levels that we can study ecology at. And essentially, as we bump down this list, they get larger and larger in size. An individual, I think you know that that's referring to just one. As you go to population, it gets bigger, community, etc. So I want to take a look at what these are, and then I'm going to have you practice an activity to see if you can sort different examples of living and non-living things into these categories um, as we take that. So I'm just going to back out of this for a second, and I want to go and look at a little list here of really simply uh, what those definitions, what those words actually mean. So if we go to look at these, um, I just want to actually highlight my mouse here. Um, organism, obviously, like we said, that's we've already talked about. That's any living thing. An individual, think of some examples, would be just one single organism. Like you are an individual. You're obviously one single human being. But it doesn't have to just be human beings. You could also have a case where an individual, such as we could say, hey, a fish, one single trout is an individual organism. So that one's pretty easy. Population, we're going to be spending a lot of time on throughout the remainder of the year. And that's a little different. That's if you take all of the individuals in one kind rather, in an area. So rather than talking about just a cow, we would say a population of cows. And the key here is you have to talk about something in a specified area. So if we just say, hey, all of those cows, we've got to be a little more specific. Are you talking about cows in a field? The population of cows in Westerly, the population of cows in Rhode Island. So that specified area is a big part. Uh, Community is another one. When I think probably most of you, when you hear that word, you think of Westerly, the community of Westerly. So that's where you bump up to a larger area of study, and that's all of the different populations in that area. So if we go back to the community of Westerly, we're not talking about just the population of humans, although we're part of the community. We're also talking about the population of oak trees, of fish, of chickens, of all the living things in that area. So you can see a community is even bigger. And then our last level, our biggest level that for right now that we're going to care about is something called an ecosystem. You've probably heard of that word before. And that's where you're going to take all of the organisms, everything in that community, all living organisms, all the population, and you add in non-living factors. So it's all of the living, or if we scroll down, all the biotic. This little prefix bio means living, means life, and all of the abiotic. This prefix, usually with an A in front of it, means not or opposite. So in an ecosystem, you're talking about all the populations, all the living things, and all the non-living factors. So don't let these are our nerd words like we've had on our wall in the classroom. We're just looking at them a little bit differently. So the key for us to understand ecology is making sure that you know what these nerd words mean. So what I want to do and give you a chance to practice that, promise, like I said, I'll keep everything short here, is that if we're going to know what those nerd words are, like we said, each of these as our level, as we go down, it starts off smaller, gets bigger and bigger and bigger. We want to be able to practice them. So what we're going to look at, oops, went a little too far here, is our main focus is what is the relationship ultimately between individuals, populations, and communities. And we're going to answer that. But today we just want to practice making sure we know and we can identify individuals, populations, and communities. So to do that, it's going to be pretty darn simple. Um, Back on our classroom, you're going to have a section under population ecology where I've given you a bunch of, well, we call them cards, but obviously from home on your computer, they're not cut out. And if we scroll down here and we look at them, each of these cards has something on it. Most of them have living things. Um, some of them are not living. And what I'm going to ask that you do here, really simple, is you're going to go through these cards. It would be great if you had the actual cards, if you could print them out and cut them. You're going to go through these cards, and I'm going to ask you to sort them. Like which cards on here, which things that you see are showing you an individual, which things are showing you a population, which things are showing you a community, and then which things might actually be showing you really an ecosystem. And there even are some things on here that are abiotic, that are not living. So in order to do that, you're going to look at these cards, pretty simple. And I've also given you a little guide, a Google form to work off of, where I've reminded you that here's our main focus question, our essential question, what we're after. Our objective is to make sure today that you can identify different parts of an ecosystem. And you're going to know you're successful if you can analyze and categorize the cards and put them into biotic levels, individual, like we talked about, population, community, etc. So what you're going to want to do is kind of off the guidance of here, you're going to go back and sort those cards. And on a separate sheet of paper, I'm going to ask you really to kind of to make a chart just like this. Copy this chart down right in your notebooks. And as you go through the cards, you can just write them. Like if there was a picture of me on there, Mr. Bentley, well, I would be an individual. So you could write Mr. Bentley right below that. If there was a picture of 5 brook trout swimming together, that would be a population. So you could put brook trout over here. So I'm going to ask you to do a couple things. You're going to go through and look at the cards, read through them, and sort them out and write down, don't forget the abiotic, what's in each category. And you're going to know that you're finished after you've done that for practice. Your exit ticket, this will be under the exit ticket area, is going to be, I'm going to ask you to fill out an exit ticket here. Obviously, it's a Google form. So it looks really long, but it's pretty simple. It's just a checklist. I'm going to ask you to look back at your list and check off all the individuals. Anything in this list is 32. Be careful. That's an individual. And then you're going to go down, you're going to see the same list. Check off everything on here that's a population. You can check more than one. Make sure you check them all. You're going to go down, same list again, and check all the community. Anything on here that's an example of a community. And I'm going to ask you to go down and check anything that's an ecosystem. Obviously, on here, there's some ecosystems. And then I also have made that same list, but I want you to check off anything that's abiotic or not living. All right. So just like in a regular Google form, you'll complete that, and there's one little fill-in question. I'm going to ask you to type me a short note to respond to that. And when you're done, you're going to be able to click turn it in, and you'll be able to immediately see the answers. And I'll type you a little note in here, so you'll know how you did. All right. So again, I'm going to ask you to, the video is about to stop here. I'm going to ask you to go back and after watching this video, you're going to go back and again and sort through those cards like we had here. Make a list, put them on that list like we had in a Google Doc, and then you're going to go back and simply fill in this Google form. And that's it. That'll give you, you'll have achieved the lesson's objectives. All right, guys, remember I'll be over in the Google Hangout helping you if you have any questions. Good luck. Make sure you're ready to rock and roll. See ya.